Hey guys, tonight we're heading back nearly 2,000 years to a place where laundry was a full-body workout and a splash of urine was worth its weight in gold ancient Rome. You're about to step through cobbled streets and into the steamy heart of the city, where workers scrubbed, stomped, and strained to keep togas white and tunics wearable. And let's just say, you probably wouldn't survive 5 minutes there without pinching your nose. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And, hey, drop a comment with your location and local time. I love knowing where in the world you're listening from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You start your morning in the Sabura district, a dense, noisy, not quite glamorous slice of Rome. The sun hasn't fully risen, but the city is already humming. You step around carts filled with figs, dodge a sleepy mule tied too close to a doorway, and then pause at the edge of a narrow alley. That's where you hear it, the splash of water sloshing in buckets, the sharp calls of traders setting up, and the unmistakable squelch of wet fabric being stomped clean. You turn the corner, and there it is, your destination. The Fullonica, Rome's industrial-scale laundry shop. It doesn't look like much, just a squat stone building with a wide entrance and faded frescoes of men working in tubs, but it smells like everything. Soap, sweat, lavender, vinegar, and something sharper. You're not sure what it is at first, but you'll find out soon enough. Inside, the air is thick with mist and motion. You squint as your eyes adjust to the dim interior, where men and women bustle between basins, dragging baskets of linens and shouting above the din. The floor is worn smooth by centuries of footsteps and stained darker near the work pits, sunken tubs lined with limestone and stained from decades of dyes and detergents. Someone hands you a woven apron. It's damp. Everything's damp. You slip it over your head and follow the woman who gave it to you. Her name's Livia. She moves fast, weaving between steaming tubs and snapping out orders as she goes. Don't drop anything white in with the colored stuff unless you want to dye it on accident, she says over her shoulder. You nod, though you're not sure you could hear her even if she were facing you. It's that loud in here. The first job filling the vats. And you quickly learn that not all water is created equal in the Roman world. You help hoist a clay amphora from the corner, nearly toppling under its sloshing weight. It smells tangy, like vinegar and something worse. Livia watches you struggle and smirks. Urine, she says. Best thing we have for lifting grease. Collected fresh from the street pots. She gestures toward a barrel near the door, where passers-by are encouraged, no, expected to relieve themselves. It's part civic duty, part donation. You try not to gag. You dump the liquid into the tub, stepping back as a cloud of sharp ammonia wafts up. That smell from earlier mystery solved. Next comes the clothes. A slave boy drags in a basket piled with tunics stained in clay, oil, and something that might be wine. You help Livia separate them linens from woolens, whites from dyed pieces. She handles them like puzzle pieces, checking for tears and deciding which vat each should go into. You crouch by a pit and start loading the garments. The water stings your fingers. Livia joins you, hikes up her skirt, and steps into the tub without hesitation. You're not going to clean anything just by staring at it, she says. So, you climb in. The bottom is slippery, and your sandals keep threatening to float away. But soon you're stomping alongside her. Left, right, twist, stomp. It's more like a dance than a chore, except your calves are already protesting and your nose is plotting mutiny. Still, the togas start to brighten. The rhythm becomes hypnotic. around you. The fullonica pulses with movement. Workers scrub wool against ridged stones, slap linens on flat marble slabs, and wring water from sleeves like it owes them money. You spot a boy stirring soap in a copper pot, the steam curling into lazy ribbons that mingle with the harsher smells. And then you hear it. The fullonica's soundtrack isn't just work, it's conversation. Gossip floats through the air like steam. You catch snippets a senator caught sneaking into the baths at midnight, a baker's daughter running off with a flute player, a dispute over a goat that allegedly trespassed into someone's garden. The washerwomen are Rome's rumor mill, and laundry is their excuse. You pause to stretch your aching back. Livia hands you a damp cloth and nods toward a stone bench. You'll need your strength. Next up, the rinse vats. As you sit, watching a line of togas drip into a basin beside a painted wall, you begin to understand something. In a city of emperors and gladiators, marble temples and grand speeches, it's the quiet rhythm of daily labor that holds everything together. The stomp of feet in urine-filled tubs, the laughter between scrubs, the smell of sour soap and lavender oil. It's messy and hard and strangely beautiful. Historians still argue whether fullers were respected craftsmen or looked down upon as lowly laborers. But here, in this moment, with sore legs and a damp apron, it feels like you're part of the fabric of Rome, quite literally. You rise, your legs wobbling, and follow Livia toward the aqueduct-fed rinse vats, your nose still tingling and your heart, oddly enough, full. You trail after Livia, your steps careful on the slick stone floor, the faint sound of your sandals echoing behind you. The air shifts subtly as you pass deeper into the fullonica, from the acidic tang of ammonia to something cooler, crisper. Here, tucked along the side wall, is the rinsing station marble basins carved deep into the floor, fed directly by a narrow channel of water flowing straight from the aqueduct above. It's beautiful, in a strange, functional kind of way. The water flows clean and steady, sparkling faintly in the low light as it ripples across the white stone. You hadn't expected beauty in a place soaked with grime and soaked clothing, but Rome, as ever, surprises you. Livia crouches beside one of the basins, grabbing the end of a linen tunic and swishing it through the current. "Let it soak," she says, "then rinse till the foam's gone, dirt hides in bubbles." You mimic her movements, dunking and lifting, swirling the garment through the water. It's oddly soothing, watching the fabric dance below the surface, the soap trailing away like little clouds dissolving into the current. The aqueduct's engineering is miraculous. You glance up and can just make out where the water enters through a spout embedded in the upper wall, a clever system of channels and slopes controlling pressure and direction. The water is cold, fresh, and constant. It said the aqueducts brought in millions of gallons a day, feeding public fountains, bathhouses, gardens, and even laundries like this one. Your arms are wet to the elbow, but the sensation is clean, refreshing. After the warmth of the urine-soaked wash pits, this feels like a cool stream running through the heart of the city, beside you. Livia hums softly, a tune that sounds older than the stone beneath your feet. A boy scurries past with a bundle of towels, his tunic flapping. "Move quick," Livia calls to him. "The sun's almost high. We lose our best drying light if we waste time." She stands and squeezes water from the tunic she'd been rinsing, her fingers practiced and strong. "Come on," she says, nodding toward a narrow stairwell in the back. You follow her up the steps, one hand trailing along the cool, worn stone wall, until you emerge onto the flat rooftop of the building. The light is brighter here, almost blinding after the shadows below. The sky is a flat, endless blue, with only the hint of clouds drifting lazily past. You blink, adjusting, and then take in the sight. Lines of rope stretch from beam to beam, hung with everything from work aprons to magistrates' togas. They ripple gently in the breeze like flags at a festival. The rooftop tiles are warm beneath your feet, and you catch the faint scent of oil and clay rising with the heat. Pigeons scatter as you approach, flapping noisily toward a nearby rooftop. You and Livia string the wet tunics carefully across the lines, spacing them just enough so they dry evenly. She warns you not to overlap them. Mildew is no friend of a fullonica. You lift a toga by its shoulders, the fabric heavier than expected, and drape it over the rope. It drips in slow, steady beats, splashing onto the tiles below. From this vantage point, you can see the city in full. Red-tiled roofs, curling columns of smoke from cooking fires, the gleam of domes and marble columns in the distance. Somewhere, faintly, you hear a lyre being tuned. Rome is alive and sprawling, a patchwork of noise and stillness, grime and glory. Your gaze lingers on the baths of Caracalla, far off on the horizon, massive and magnificent. You imagine noblemen striding there in their freshly washed togas, unaware of the effort, the sweat, and the sting behind their pristine garments. Laundry, in Rome, is invisible labor felt but rarely seen. "Watch your step," Livia says, tugging you gently aside just as you nearly trip over a loose tile. More than one apprentice has gone flying off the edge. "Not the kind of stain we can scrub out." She grins, and for a moment, the whole job feels like a shared joke with the city itself. You finish hanging the last of the rinsed pieces and take a step back, hands on your hips. The wind catches one of the tunics, puffing it into shape like a ghost of the man who wore it. You find yourself smiling at the thought. As you move to sit in the shade of a clay chimney, you pull your damp apron away from your skin and stretch your legs. Livia sits beside you with a water skin, offering it without a word. The water tastes of clay and sun, simple, but more refreshing than any wine. Below, the fullonica continues its churn, the shouts, the splashes, the hiss of steam, and the rhythm of stomped feet. Up here, though, it feels like a different world. Breezy, light, even peaceful. People think laundry's just soap and water, Livia says quietly. But it's timing. Sun. Hands that know when to press hard and when to let go. You nod. It's like music, or cooking, or weaving a rhythm passed down by practice. Not scrolls. A soft bell rings out from a nearby market, marking mid-morning. You know there's more to do, more fabrics waiting, more tools to clean, more vats to empty and refill, but for now, you sit in the stillness. The city hums beneath you, and you're part of it. Part of the breath and bone of something ancient and immense. Historians still argue whether fullonica were run like businesses or guilds, whether laundresses earned fair coin or were barely paid at all. But sitting here, wind in your hair, the scent of lavender mingling with limestone, those debates feel far away. All that matters is the rhythm of today. You rise slowly, brush dust from your knees, and follow Livia back toward the stairwell, her shadow stretching beside yours in the sun. You descend the stone stairwell, back into the heart of the fullonica, feet touching the cool floor again with a quiet splash. The light from the rooftop fades behind you, replaced by the dim interior glow of oil lamps set in clay sconces. The temperature drops a little, but the air feels even thicker, rich with steam and the mingling scents of soap, sweat, and old stone. Everything moves with purpose now. The rinse station has emptied, and the next phase of the process is underway. Livia hands you a stiff woolen toga, its heavy folds barely dripping after hanging out in the sun. Time to scrub, she says, motioning toward a smooth, flat slab of marble set low against the far wall. You notice other workers crouched beside their own slabs, each armed with brushes, ashes, and buckets of water that shimmer faintly in the lamplight. You kneel beside the stone, laying the toga out carefully. It's scratchy under your hands, the weave uneven, the fibers rough from wear and time. Roman togas, you've learned, are not the luxurious drapes Hollywood makes them out to be. They're thick, unwieldy, and difficult to clean. Dirt hides in the folds like secrets, clinging to the woolen fabric with stubborn pride. Beside you, Livia begins to scrub. She moves in tight circles, her brush dragging across the fabric with firm pressure. The bristles are coarse, made from boar hair. She tells you, and the soap is a thick paste made from animal fat and ash. It smells faintly of burned wood and something sour, almost metallic. You mimic her rhythm, pressing the brush into the toga and working up a faint lather. It's slower than the stomping vats, but no less demanding. Your fingers ache, your shoulders tighten, and your knees complain against the stone floor, but the process is satisfying in its own way, focused, methodical, even meditative. As you scrub, Livia begins to talk. This toga belonged to a merchant, she says. Smelled like fish when it first came in. Probably spent the day down at the docks, haggling over barrels of eels. She smirks. You can tell a man's profession by his stains, if you pay attention. You glance around and notice other workers doing just that, commenting on the marks and smudges as if they're reading a scroll. Olive oil, wine, blood, soot. Each piece of clothing carries its own silent story, and the fullers are its interpreters. You're starting to understand laundry. Here isn't just labor. It's a kind of citywide memory. Your brush hits a particularly stubborn patch dark, sticky, and embedded deep in the fibers. Olive press stain, Livia says without looking. Soak it again, then hit it with chalk dust. She tosses you a small pouch of white powder, which you sprinkle generously over the mark. The stain begins to lift, slowly, as if Rome herself were releasing it one grain at a time. Nearby, an older man, one of the senior fullers, judging by his confident stride and soot-darkened hands, kneels beside a crimson tunic. Dyed fabrics, Livia murmurs, are the hardest, especially Tyrian purple. She leans in. Costs more than gold. That dye comes from snails, thousands of them, crushed for a single ounce. You blink at the thought, so much effort, so much life, just to turn cloth into status. The man dips the tunic into a basin filled with a strange mix water, alum, vinegar, and something else pungent. Fixing the color. Livia whispers. If it fades, the client complains. If it stains another piece, the client sues. You nod, realizing how high the stakes really are for something as simple as laundry. In a city built on image and class, clean clothing isn't just hygiene, it's survival. As you finish scrubbing the merchant's toga, Livia pats your shoulder. Not bad, she says. You've got a fuller's eye already. You smile faintly, unsure whether that's a compliment or a warning. She leads you to the rinse vats once more to wash away the chalk and soap residue. The process is quicker this time, just enough to ensure the fabric won't stiffen or burn when dried again. As you wring out the toga, the water runs cloudy, but clean. From the corner of the room, someone calls out. A young girl, no more than 12, holds up a torn sleeve. Who stitched this? She asks loudly. A few heads turn. Livia sighs. Bad patch job, she mutters. We'll have to redo it. Last thing we need is a senator's sleeve unraveling during dinner. You're taken to another area of the fullonica, this one quieter, lined with wooden benches and shelves stacked with thread, needles, and thimbles. a mending station. You hadn't thought of sewing as part of laundry, but it makes perfect sense. Cleaning reveals what dirt once concealed: thin seams, worn cuffs, holes no longer hidden. You sit with the others and learn to thread a bone needle, looping thick wool thread through an eye barely wide enough. Livia shows you a simple backstitch, neat, tight, strong. You practice on a scrap piece of linen before being handed a real garment, a work tunic with a ripped hem. You sew slowly, your stitches uneven at first, but steady. The room smells of old fabric and pine resin from the wooden shelves. No one speaks much here, just the quiet rhythm of needles slipping through cloth, the occasional creak of a stool. It's the only peaceful corner of the fullonica. Historians still argue whether Roman laundry shops employed women more than men, or if children worked there by necessity or tradition. Looking around, it seems like a little of everything. Young hands learning by doing, elderly hands correcting every mistake. The shop is more than a business. It's a classroom, a family, a memory machine. When you finish the last stitch, Livia inspects it with a critical eye. Then she nods. "You'll make a decent fuller yet," she says, "or at least you won't embarrass me." You laugh softly, standing to stretch. You've scrubbed, rinsed, dried, and now sewn, and the day isn't even done. But for the first time, the overwhelming pace of it all feels manageable, even meaningful. You return to the main room, hanging the mended tunic on a line near the hearth, where it will dry faster. A gentle heat radiates from a fire built beneath a copper basin, someone's warming wax for waterproofing cloaks. You stand for a moment, watching the flicker of the flames, the steam curling up from the vats, and the endless motion of hands and cloth. Every piece has its place, every person their rhythm, and you unexpectedly feel at home in it. A sharp whistle pierces the room, drawing everyone's attention for a brief moment. A boy near the front entrance waves a piece of parchment in the air and yells, "New order!" The room responds like muscle to a twitch. Some groan, others chuckle, and a few simply adjust their pace without breaking stride. Livia wipes her hands on her apron and nods toward the front. "Come with me," she says. "You're about to see how much people will pay to keep their tunics whiter than their neighbors' teeth." You follow her to the front alcove, where a polished stone table serves as a makeshift desk. A wax tablet lies open, already marked with tallies and notes from earlier in the day. The boy places the new parchment order beside it, and Livia reads aloud. 2 tunics, 1 toga, 4 tablecloths, owner Gaius Claudius Maximus, delivery by sundown. She raises an eyebrow. He's one of the senator's aides. Always in a rush, always with wine stains. She flips through a stack of folded laundry behind the table, pulling out 1 tunic with a blotchy reddish smudge near the hem. "There it is," she says. "Probably Merlot, or goat blood. With him, you never know." You take the tunic in your hands. The stain is deep, already beginning to set. Livia guides you toward a side shelf stacked with small clay pots, each labeled in a hasty script chalk. Vinegar, bile, ash, alum. She pulls down one and pops the lid. The contents are greenish, with a sour, organic smell. "Goat bile," she says flatly. "Works like magic on protein stains." She dips her fingers in the paste and begins dabbing the tunic. "We'll let this sit for a bit. Give it a few hours, then rinse it twice. If it still shows, we'll have to re-dye the whole thing. The process is delicate, precise. You spend the next half hour watching as Livia treats each garment with tailored care. Wine needs salt and boiling water. Oil needs fuller's clay. Blood requires both vinegar and a whispered curse, just in case. There's an alchemy to it, a ritual blend of experience, guesswork, and a little superstition. By midday, the heat inside the fullonica has reached its peak. The fire near the waterproofing cauldron roars louder, radiating waves of thick warmth that make the stone walls sweat. You feel it in your shoulders, in your arms, in the sting behind your eyes. The work is endless, and yet, no one stops, not really. Someone passes you a small clay cup of watered-down wine, its flavor tart and dusty. You drink slowly, seated near the edge of the room, while watching an older woman mend a decorative fringe with eyes half closed but fingers impossibly quick. She's humming something under her breath, the tune older than language. You ask Livia if she's always worked here. She shrugs. Since I was 9. She says, "My mother brought me after my father's bakery burned down, said laundry would never go out of fashion." She smiles faintly, the kind of smile that holds both pride and fatigue. She was right. She nudges you. "Come on, let's deliver a batch." You follow her out the side entrance, where the fullonica opens into a narrow alley. The laundry cart is already loaded neatly folded tunics, rolled linens, a few fine cloaks wrapped in oiled cloth to protect them from dust. You help her lift the handles and steer the cart into the busy street. Rome surrounds you again in full color, market stalls brimming with dates and honey cakes, potters shouting prices, children chasing one another through archways. The city breathes in motion. The laundry cart creaks and bumps over the uneven road as you wind past fountains and bakeries, eventually arriving at a small domus tucked just behind the temple of Castor and Pollux. A doorman greets Livia with the faintest of nods, then retreats inside without a word. Moments later, a servant emerges, checking the folded clothes with a practiced eye. He grunts in approval, passes Livia a coin pouch, and disappears again. 3 sesterti, she mutters, weighing the pouch in her palm. Barely fair for the time we spent. She shrugs and steers the cart away. Still better than nothing. You pass another fullonica on your way back, smaller, darker, with fewer workers and a collapsing sign hanging crooked above its door. Livia glances at it briefly, but says nothing. You sense the quiet rivalry, the unspoken knowledge that even in laundry, competition hangs in the air like steam. Back at your own fullonica, you unload the cart and return the folded cloths to their respective stations. You're immediately pulled into another task this time, mixing soap paste for the evening shift. The ingredients are familiar now: ashes from olive wood, pig fat, salt, a little sand for grit. You stir the mixture slowly in a wide bronze basin, the wooden paddle heavy in your arms. The paste begins to form, thick and yellowish, sticky like warm wax. You scoop some into your palm and test its texture. Livia nods in approval. That'll work. Spread it on the scrubbing stones after sundown. Let it sit overnight. As you finish the batch, you hear a clatter near the rear wall. A shelf has collapsed under the weight of too many damp linens. A cascade of towels tumbles down, and a young apprentice scrambles to gather them. The room bursts into laughter, not cruel, but understanding. You lend a hand, helping him untangle the mess, even here, with sore hands and tired legs. People find small moments of humor to survive the grind. Historians still argue whether fullers were seen as essential or disposable part of Rome's backbone, or simply its wash basin. The truth, you think, probably lies somewhere in between. Not noble, not forgotten, just there, holding the fabric of daily life together, one tunic at a time. As the sun dips low, the fullonica shifts, lamps are lit, fires are damped, and tools are cleaned. Someone hums a tune about Fortuna, the goddess of chance. You're handed a broom to sweep away the loose ash and wet straw near the vats. It's a small task, quiet and repetitive, but strangely peaceful. When you finish, You lean against the door frame and watch the last rays of sunlight stretch across the tiled floor. The day is ending, not with triumph or celebration, but with the quiet satisfaction of work done. Stains lifted, seams mended, and togas ready for morning. You breathe in. The air still smells of ammonia and lavender, and something undeniably human. It's not a perfume, but it's Rome, and tonight, that's enough. The next morning, the fullonica is quieter. The noise hasn't vanished, it's only softened, like a blanket drawn over a restless child. You arrive just as the first rays of sunlight slice through the narrow upper windows, catching droplets left clinging to the stone walls. The scent of damp wool and fading vinegar still hangs in the air, but it's less overwhelming today, familiar now, as if your senses have surrendered to the rhythm of this place. You nod a quiet greeting to Livia, who's already sorting a pile of garments at the folding table. Her hair is pinned up with a wooden comb, and she wears the same sun-faded tunic from yesterday. "Hope you got some sleep," she says, not looking up. "The magistrate's order came in late last night. 5 togas. Needs them pressed and bleached by noon." You take the stack she's assembled, each toga already washed and dried, but still dull, still heavy with the off-white hue of time. Roman elites expect bright garments almost unnaturally so. Clean isn't enough. Their status must shimmer, and you're about to learn how that illusion is made. Livia leads you to a small room at the back of the fullonica, one you haven't entered before. It's brighter, with sunlight filtering through a slatted wooden ceiling and reflecting off glazed tiles. This is the bleaching room, where sunlight becomes a tool of transformation. The process begins with sulfur. You wrinkle your nose as Livia lifts the lid on a low clay brazier. The fumes rise, slowly biting. Sharp, acrid. "Hold your breath if you can," she says, already masking her face with a damp cloth. You do the same as she lays the togas over a wooden rack suspended above the open flame. The sulfur smolders, releasing sulfur dioxide, which clings to the damp cloth and lifts away natural yellowing. It's a slow burn, literally, and requires patience, supervision, and strong lungs. You sit beside the doorway, just outside the smoke's reach, fanning the air with a straw paddle to keep it circulating. There's an art to bleaching here. Not too much sulfur, or the fabric weakens. Not too little, or the whiteness doesn't last, and always in balance with the sun. The most successful fullers are those who can read the light, not just the hour, but the hue of morning, the angle of warmth, the speed of evaporation. Once the sulfur treatment is complete, the togas are laid flat on stone slabs outside the rear of the building, where they'll bask in the sunlight for several hours. You help Livia carry them out, one by one, their edges trailing like ghostly fingers along the floor. The back courtyard is already warm, buzzing with flies and the soft rustle of drying leaves. You lay each toga down carefully, smoothing the folds, aligning the hems. Livia sprinkles the fabric lightly with water infused with lye ash and crushed seashells, another whitening trick, ancient and effective. The garments glisten in the sun, pale and almost blue in the brightness. You sit on a small stool near the wall, watching the fabric ripple as the wind picks up. The courtyard is quiet compared to the main hall. You hear pigeons cooing from a nearby rooftop, the soft jangle of a mule's harness in the distance, the crackle of the brazier still burning within. It's a moment of stillness, a rare pause in a job defined by motion. Sun does most of the work from here, Livia says, finally allowing herself to sit. She drinks from a gourd and offers it to you. The water is cool this time, lightly scented with mint. Romans say the gods love whiteness, that it reflects order, piety, discipline. She shrugs. Maybe that's true, or maybe they just want to look more important than the next guy. You glance at the togas, their surface glowing under the midday light. They do look impressive, you admit. She grins. Just don't wear one in the rain. For the next hour, you rotate the garments carefully, brushing off dust, re-wetting dry patches. Livia returns to the main hall, leaving you alone with the sunlight, the wind, and the scent of heated cloth and crushed shells. You begin to understand the quieter side of the work, the tending, the watching, the patience. Historians still argue whether Roman fullers were innovators or simply following traditions handed down from Etruscans and Greeks. The techniques are old, older than the Republic itself, and yet refined here to a science. There's no textbook. Everything is passed hand to hand, one scraped knuckle at a time. Eventually, Livia calls you back inside. The magistrate's servant has arrived early, and the togas must be folded quickly. You gather them carefully, now nearly weightless, glowing like polished ivory. Back in the folding room, Livia shows you how to shape the garments into neat squares, creases sharp, folds precise, the edges aligned like temple columns. She finishes the stack with a strip of lavender-tied twine. "He'll notice that," she says, "and he'll pay more next time." The servant enters without knocking, young, overdressed, and clearly impatient. He barely glances at you, but Livia hands him the stack with a firm nod. He tosses her a small bag of coins and disappears down the alley as quickly as he came. Livia opens the pouch. 4 denarii. Fair, considering he's always in a hurry. She tosses you one. You earned that. You stare at the coin, heavy, real, with the profile of Emperor Antoninus Pius stamped into its surface. Your first Roman wage. It feels both momentous and completely ordinary, like a pebble that still manages to ripple water. The rest of the afternoon slips by in a blur of small tasks, scraping the residue from the scrubbing slabs, emptying the fire pits, airing out the soiled aprons. But your mind lingers on the courtyard, on the sunlight dancing across fabric, and the strangely satisfying process of turning something worn and yellowed into something luminous. By the time the sun begins to lower, casting long shadows across the tiled floors, you find yourself alone in the bleach room again, checking for scorch marks near the brazier. The sulfur has cooled. The room smells faintly of ash and stone now. You stand there a moment longer, letting the quiet settle around you. The togas are gone, but a trace of them remains in the air, a scent of sunlight and lavender and heat. You close your eyes and take one long breath. For a job that leaves no signature, no statue, no scroll of record, laundry in ancient Rome carries a weight all its own. It lingers in folds, in fibers, in the hands that fold the last seam before the sun sets. And tonight, those hands are yours. The next task comes with a surprise. Just as you step out of the bleaching room, a shout from the far end of the fullonica sends everyone into motion. "Special delivery," someone yells. Livia appears from the folding area, wiping her hands on her apron. She raises an eyebrow when she sees the crate being wheeled in on a wooden cart ropes, wrapped tightly around it, sealed with a wax emblem pressed into parchment. "That's not laundry," she mutters, approaching the cart. You trail behind her as the boy delivering it unties the ropes and lifts the lid with a grunt. Inside are several bolts of fabric, all bright colors: emerald, crimson, deep blue, and tucked beside them is a small ceramic jar stamped with a merchant's mark. "Die." You realize instantly this won't be a typical day. Livia picks up the jar and peers inside. The substance gleams under the low light, dark and almost syrupy. "Indigo," she says, "imported from the East, and expensive." She gestures for you to help unload the cloth. The bolts are smooth and fine, clearly higher quality than most of what you've handled so far. Must be for a wedding, she murmurs. Or a politician's family. They like color when there's something to show off. She takes you to the dyeing room, which is far less romantic than it sounds. The floor is blackened from years of use. Clay vats, wide and deep, line one wall, each stained a different hue: yellow from saffron, red from madder root, purple from sea snails, brown from oak galls. Some are still warm from the morning's batch, others bubbling slightly from the coals beneath them. This is Marcus's area, Livia says. He's one of the best. Been dyeing cloth longer than I've been walking. As if summoned. Marcus appears from behind a curtain of hanging linen. He's older, perhaps in his 60s, with arms stained permanently by the very colors he works with. Indigo clings to his fingernails like ink. So, he says, eyeing the jar. They want deep color, rich, won't settle for splotches. He nods to you and motions toward a nearby basin. Fill it halfway with clean water. Then heat it. Slow fire. No flames licking the sides, or you'll scorch the dye. You obey, working alongside him as he prepares the cloth. No soap today, he mutters. No ash, just the dye. Let it speak for itself. You watch as he soaks the fabric, folding it carefully to avoid creases. Then he pours the indigo in. At first, the water barely changes. But within moments, the color blooms deep and brilliant, almost alive. The fabric absorbs it slowly, like breath filling a lung. It looks blue. You whisper. He chuckles. Now. Yes. But it goes in green. Watch closely. Sure enough, the cloth in the vat takes on a murky green at first. Only when he lifts it from the water, holding it into the air, does the true color emerge: deep, unmistakable indigo reacting to the oxygen. It feels like magic. This part, he says, eyes twinkling, is what makes people believe in the gods. You and Marcus work silently for over an hour, dipping, lifting, airing, then repeating the process for greater saturation. The dye stains your hands, seeps into the folds of your tunic, but you barely notice. The rhythm is absorbing, hypnotic. Eventually, the dyed cloth is hung along thick ropes in a covered courtyard, safe from direct sunlight. Let it dry slowly, Marcus instructs. Too fast, and the color runs. Too slow, and it fades. You glance down at your arms, now streaked with blue, and can't help but grin. Livia passes by and laughs. Now you're one of us, she says. Even the gods couldn't wash that out. Later in the day, Livia pulls you aside again. You've done well, she says, voice lower than usual. I want to show you something. She leads you to the Fullonica's backmost room, small and windowless, lit only by a single oil lamp. A heavy curtain hangs across the entrance. She pushes it aside and motions you in. Inside are shelves, dozens of them, each packed with clay pots, scrolls, fabric swatches, and tiny tablets covered in writing, recipes, formulas, notes. This, you realize, is the archive, the secret heart of the operation. This is where we keep everything, Livia says quietly. How to treat beetle juice for dye, how to mix wax and tallow for weatherproofing, how long to soak goat hair before it's soft enough for combing. You scan the labels. Some are written in Latin, others in Greek. A few are simply drawings, symbols, and diagrams etched by hand. Generations of fullers have left their knowledge here, preserved in ink and ash. We don't let everyone in, she adds. You've earned a look. You reach for one of the swatches and run your fingers over it, soft, clean, perfectly preserved. It's like touching time itself. You imagine the hands that stitched it, the fingers that tested it against the light. Historians still argue whether these records were common or rare, whether fullers guarded their methods or shared them freely across shops and cities. Judging by this room, the truth leans toward protection. Secrets kept safe through labor, not law. Livia leaves you there for a moment, trusting you in the silence. You don't speak. You don't move much. You just let the space speak to you. Eventually, you return to the main hall, where the sounds of the day are slowly fading. Workers gather their tools, rinse their brushes, roll up damp aprons. The dye vats are cooling, the fires dulled to embers. Even the air seems to exhale. You help sweep up loose fibers near the folding table, watching as Marcus adds a new entry to the dye records in the back. A single line, a memory made permanent. And as you pack up for the day, hands stained, arms sore, eyes heavy, you feel it again. That strange sense of being woven into something larger, a fabric not just of cloth, but of people, of effort, of quiet pride. Outside, the sky darkens to indigo. Fitting. The next morning begins with rain. It's not heavy, not a storm, but enough to change everything. The soft patter echoes through the tile roofs, turning the air inside the fullonica damp and cool. Outside, rivulets of water race through the gutters and down the alleyways, washing away the dust and dirt of the city, only to leave behind mud and murk. Inside, it means schedules must shift, drying slows, bleaching stalls, and tempers grow short. You arrive just after sunrise to find the folding room packed with half-dried linens and frustrated workers. Someone's shouting near the vat room. Another is frantically relighting a brazier that won't catch. Livia stands in the center of it all, calm but sharp-eyed, issuing directions with quick efficiency. We'll keep the togas inside until the rain passes, she says. Move all drying racks under the awning, and no bleaching today unless you want patchy whites and angry clients. You move quickly, helping relocate the wooden racks of linens to the open-air hallway that borders the courtyard. The ceiling there is just high enough to keep the rain at bay, though the breeze still sneaks in from the sides. You brush droplets from the edges of the cloth and pin them with smooth river stones to keep them from flapping in the wind. The rain doesn't just affect the drying, it changes the rhythm of the fullonica. Workers who would normally be scrubbing or rinsing now sit near the hearth, darning socks or reshaping wooden paddles used for beating dust from wool. You join Livia at the tool bench, where she's sharpening the edge of a bone needle against a flat stone. This happens often, she says. Rain's no friend to a fuller, but Rome doesn't stop just because the sky's crying. She hands you a needle and a tunic with fraying seams. Start here. We'll mend while we wait. You settle into a seat beside her, the tunic across your lap. It's coarser than most, probably a laborer's work garment, stained and faded. As you stitch, the noise of the fullonica dims. It's quieter today, more focused. Even the gossip has lowered to a murmur. Across the room, an older woman hums as she knits a sleeve from raw wool. Marcus, the dyer, is sitting with his legs stretched out, polishing a jar lid with a rag. Someone passes around a plate of soaked barley and cheese wrapped in fig leaves. The smell is sour, but oddly comforting. The rain continues to fall, steady but soft. Outside the open hallway, the alley glistens with puddles. You watch as the drops create tiny concentric circles on the surface of a stone basin collecting runoff. It's almost hypnotic. Come on, Livia says after a while. I'll show you how we weatherproof cloaks. You follow her to the back room where the fire is kept low under a wide copper pot. Inside is a thick mixture, opaque, yellowish, slightly shiny. Beeswax and tallow, she explains. Melted slow. Too hot. It clumps. Too cold. It cracks. She hands you a half-dried woolen cloak and a small brush made from bundled reeds. Paint it on. Thin layer. The wool soaks it up, makes the cloak nearly waterproof once it sets. You dip the brush and begin. The waxy substance warm against the fabric. The process is slower than you expect, each stroke deliberate. You press it into the threads, watching it disappear, absorbed fully. The smell of wax fills the room earthy, clean, rich. Livia watches your technique, nodding approvingly. In the army, they treat their cloaks like armor. A wet soldier's a sick soldier. A sick soldier's a dead one. You keep working, layer by layer. It's almost like painting. When you finish the first cloak, Livia helps you hang it from a wooden peg near the hearth. Let it cool there, she says. In the morning, it'll shed rain like a duck. Just as you turn to start the next one, a young apprentice rushes into the room, nearly slipping on the damp floor. Livia, he's here. She straightens. Who the official? From the censor's office. He's inspecting all licensed fullonica this month. Livia sighs, wiping her hands on her apron. Of course he is. She turns to you. You'll want to see this. The official arrives not long after, stepping in from the rain with an air of irritation and entitlement. He wears a neatly pressed tunic under a hooded cloak, and his sandals are spotless, a detail that seems almost unnatural, considering the state of the streets. He's followed by a younger assistant, carrying a wax tablet and stylus, ready to record every word. Livia greets them with practiced politeness, offering a cloth to wipe their hands. You're early, she says. Efficient, the official corrects. Let's begin. The inspection is meticulous. He checks the vats for cleanliness, the soap supplies for proper ingredients, the dye room for secure storage. He asks pointed questions: how often the water is changed, whether workers are registered, how soot disposal is handled. Livia answers smoothly, never hesitating. You trail behind, watching closely. This isn't about cloth or cleaning. It's about power, regulation, taxes. The fullonica doesn't just wash Rome's clothes, it's tangled in Rome's bureaucracy. At one point, the official lifts a folded tunic and frowns. There's a faint odor, he says. It rained this morning, Livia replies. Humidity slows the drying. If you smell anything, it's honesty. For a moment, you think he'll object, but instead, he smirks. Fair enough. Historians still argue whether these inspections were truly about cleanliness or more about revenue, ensuring fullers paid their dues, kept in line. The records show fines levied, shops shuttered, and licenses revoked. But here, now, it feels more like theater, a performance both sides know well. When the official leaves, Livia exhales and leans back against the doorframe. We passed, she says. Barely. You smile. Because of honesty, she grins. Because of lavender oil hidden under the folding table, as the rain finally begins to ease, sunlight pokes through the cloud cover. Golden beams stretch across the workshop floor, catching in puddles and freshly folded tunics. The mood lightens. Someone begins to sing softly. Others join in, humming as they return to work. You take up another cloak and return to the wax pot. The steam rises soft and slow, like a dream just beginning to form. The day presses on, but now with ease. The storm has passed. The rhythm resumes, and somewhere outside, Rome exhales. By late afternoon, the sun breaks through in earnest, pouring light through every crack in the fullonica's weathered walls. The gloom of morning melts into warm, golden reflections, bouncing off copper pots and wet stone. The air still clings to a touch of dampness, but the courtyard begins to breathe again, linens unfurling like sails in a returning breeze. You've just finished waxing the final cloak when Livia calls for your help again, this time from the front of the shop. "We've got an odd one," she says as you approach, pointing to a woven bundle propped near the door. "Came in without a name, just a note." She holds up a scrap of parchment, written in quick, slanted Latin clean thoroughly. "Remove all signs. No questions. It's cryptic, but not entirely unusual. Rome has its secrets, and the fullonica sometimes plays a part in them. Politicians, wealthy merchants, even minor nobles, people with something to hide. Dirt in Rome is not always about soil." You and Livia unwrap the bundle and find a single garment inside a fine woolen tunic, dark green, embroidered near the collar, but it's stained badly. A mix of wine, ash, oil, and something else. You both go quiet for a moment, studying the pattern of discoloration. "It looks like it was burned," you say finally. Livia nods. "Likely a tavern fight. Or worse." You carry the tunic back to the scrub room, laying it out on the long stone slab. Livia fetches a small vial of smoke-scented oil and begins to dab the worst of the damage. "This pulls the soot," she explains, or tries to. As you work side by side, she speaks low. "We get pieces like this from time to time. No names, no addresses, just instructions. Do you ever find out what happened, you ask?" She shrugs. "Not our place to ask." You scrub carefully, lifting the wine stain one layer at a time. Beneath the filth, the embroidery begins to show more clearly: fig leaves, twined in a circle. You've seen the symbol before, carved above the doors of a private villa near the edge of the city. As the tunic slowly returns to form, you realize it's not just cleaning you're doing, it's erasure. The city doesn't forget, but it allows people to start over if they know where to send their laundry. A shout interrupts your thoughts. Delivery cart's back, someone calls. You finish rinsing the tunic and hang it gently in the shaded hallway to dry. Then follow Livia outside. The delivery cart rattles into the alley, pulled by a short, stocky mule and driven by a boy you haven't seen before. He hops down and opens the back, revealing a heap of linens bundled in cloth. Most are rough plain wool, common tunics, a few modest cloaks, but one corner gleams. Livia sees it too. She steps forward and lifts it, a toga. Not just any toga. This one is rimmed with a narrow purple stripe, barely visible now under the dust and folds. The edge marks him as senatorial. She mutters. "Very high-ranking. And look, it's been patched before." She turns the fabric to show a place near the hem where a clumsy mend has been undone. Someone tried to hide a tear, badly. You help unload the rest of the cart, but your mind lingers on the toga. Why would a senator send it here, to a modest fullonica tucked behind a bakery? Livia seems to sense your curiosity but doesn't speak of it. Instead, she hands you the toga. Soak it, hot water. Don't agitate it too much. You take it to the rinse station, where steam now rises again from the freshly stoked fire beneath the copper basin. The water is warm but not scalding, just enough to loosen the dust and old oils. You lower the toga slowly, careful not to twist or bunch it. This isn't just cloth, it's reputation. As it soaks, Livia joins you. "They all come here eventually," she says. "The rich, the reckless, the ones who pretend they don't sweat." She stirs the basin gently with a wooden rod. "They don't want the big laundries near the forum. Too visible. Here, they get privacy, discretion, and better folds." You smirk? "Is that what we sell, folds?" She laughs. "We sell silence." The day winds toward evening, and you move the cleaned garments back toward the folding tables. A pair of young girls' apprentices from a neighboring shop arrive with a note requesting lavender oil and a few sharp needles. Livia trades them for a small bag of goat hair, useful for padding inside traveling cloaks. While the others finish folding and counting deliveries, you take a moment to breathe. The air is warm now, tinged with the scent of wax, soap, and smoke from distant chimneys. Somewhere, someone is roasting chestnuts. The smell drifts down the alley, mixing with the city's 1,000 other stories. You return to the shaded hallway to check on the green tunic. It's nearly dry. The embroidery now glints softly in the angled light. All the stains are gone. No evidence remains. Whoever wears it next will walk through the city untouched by yesterday. Historians still argue how fullers were perceived in their time, respected for their skill or reviled for their smells. The reality, your learning, is more complicated. In Rome, reputation isn't just about what you wear. It's about who makes you clean. As twilight falls, Livia gathers the final stack of linens and calls for help loading them into the evening delivery cart. You lift one bundle after another, the fabric warm against your arms, still carrying the day's labor. When the last package is tucked inside, she slides the cart's latch closed and ties the final knot. She doesn't say anything right away, just stands there in the quiet, watching the shadows stretch across the stones. Then, without looking at you, she says, "You're learning fast." You nod. "I've had good teachers." She smiles just a little and heads inside. You linger a moment longer, feeling the stone beneath your feet, the night breeze against your skin, the faint scent of sulfur and lavender woven into your tunic. Rome is loud. Rome is chaotic. Rome is endless. But here, in the fullonica, with your hands stained and your breath steady, you've found something quieter, and it's beginning to feel like home. Morning comes again, softer this time. The city stretches awake beneath a sky of thin gray clouds, the kind that promise neither rain nor sun, but something in between, a hazy calm that settles over the rooftops like a veil. You arrive at the fullonica early, before most of the others, drawn by the stillness that only exists in the hour before the heat. The work and the shouting begin. Inside, the air is cool, the hearth hasn't been lit yet, and the vats are quiet. You breathe in the mingled scent of soapstone, wool, and lingering lavender from the bundles sent out the night before. The silence feels rare, almost sacred. You begin the morning by checking on the waxed cloaks, hanging from the pegs by the fire pit. They now feel stiff, smooth, and cool to the touch, perfectly waterproof. You fold them gently, the waxed seams creaking faintly under your fingers, and stack them in a bin near the front door. Livia arrives not long after, wrapped in a clean tunic, her braids still damp from the morning wash. She nods at your progress, but her expression is thoughtful. "You're early," she says. "So are you," you reply. She grins. "Couldn't sleep. The dye order's due today." You both move to the back of the shop where the bolts of indigo-dyed fabric from earlier in the week now rest under linen covers. The color has set beautifully deep, vibrant, not a hint of blotching or streak. You help her unwrap each bolt, checking for imperfections, brushing off dust, folding the edges. As you work, she tells you a story about the merchant who placed the order, a former soldier turned traitor, now trying to win favor with a provincial governor by gifting him the finest dyed cloth in the capital. Livia rolls her eyes. Politics smells worse than a urine vat. You chuckle but say nothing. She's not wrong. By mid-morning, the shop is in full motion again. Apprentices scurry with wet linens. The vats hiss to life, and the pounding of cloth against stone echoes like a distant drumbeat. You're assigned to the scouring pit today a large, low basin used for garments that need something stronger than soap but gentler than lye. The scouring mixture smells sour, a combination of aged vinegar, powdered chalk, and boiled tree bark. You kneel beside the basin, sleeves rolled high, forearms sinking into the water as you stir the cloth rhythmically. The tunic you're working on belonged to a cook, judging by the mix of oil, wine, and what might have been a roasted fig stain. Around you, the fullonica hums with its usual life. Gossip returns, floating across the suds news of a gladiator who collapsed in the arena, of a merchant caught smuggling Egyptian perfumes, of someone's cousin proposing marriage after spilling soup on a senator's sandal. Someone hands you a fresh bundle new work. As you unroll it, a piece of fine linen tumbles out, embroidered with delicate patterns of vine and grape clusters. You recognize the emblem immediately. It belongs to the Vestal Virgins. Livia steps beside you, instantly serious. "Handle that with care," she says quietly. "That goes through the rinsing pool only. No soap, no bleach, and definitely no rough scrubbing." You nod and lift the fabric carefully, cradling it like a secret. It's smooth, impossibly light, with stitching so fine it disappears in the folds. You walk it to the rinse station, clear it a fresh basin, and let it soak in cool aqueduct water laced with just a hint of rose oil. As it floats there, the scent lifts gently into the air, softening everything around it. "I don't understand why they bring it here," you say to Livia later. "Shouldn't something this sacred be cleaned in the temples?" She shrugs. "Even the divine need fullers. And the Vestals are powerful, but they're still bound by rules. They can't leave the city. They can't touch fire. And they're not allowed to stain anything white." You glance at the basin. There wasn't a stain. "There never is," she says. "That's why they bring it." You return to the courtyard, where a new delivery waits this time. Wool sheets used in a bathhouse near the Tiber. You help another worker load them onto the upper lines for drying, the thick fabric flapping in the breeze like sails on a trireme. The sunlight is finally breaking through the clouds, and the city begins to warm. By midday, the dye order is packed, sealed, and sent off in the delivery cart. Marcus oversees the handoff, his hands still faintly blue, his eyes squinting from the sunlight. He gives a small nod as the cart disappears down the alley, then returns to his mixing pots without another word. You find a quiet moment to sit in the courtyard, beneath the low branches of a fig tree that leans lazily over the wall. Your hands are stained, your back aches, but you feel content. The sounds of the fullonica roll in waves chatter. Water, motion familiar now, like a second heartbeat. Historians still argue about how central the fullers were to Rome's economy, whether they were mere laborers or artisans in their own right. Sitting here, with sunlight on your arms and the scent of dye in the air, the question seems beside the point. Because here, in this place of labor and laughter, steam and soap, you've begun to understand something deeper. Cleanliness in Rome isn't just a condition, it's a performance, a declaration, a promise, and you are now one of its quiet architects. As the afternoon fades, Livia calls you to help with one last task, restocking the urinals outside the building. It's the least glamorous job, no doubt, but vital. You carry the clay pots, emptying the contents into a holding barrel behind the shop. The smell is, as always, sharp. But now, you no longer recoil. It's just part of the work, part of the rhythm. Once finished, you wash your hands thoroughly with rough soap and crushed pine needles, then return to the folding room where the last of the day's laundry waits to be pressed. You move easily now, folding tunics and wrapping cloaks with practiced fingers, every crease exact, every edge aligned. You catch Livia watching you from across the room. She doesn't say anything, just nods once and turns back to her work. And somehow, that nod means more than words ever could. The next day, the city is louder than usual. You hear it even before reaching the fullonica drums echoing from the forum. Voices raised in excitement, the distant clang of cymbals and horns. A festival. Livia had mentioned it yesterday, offhandedly, while scrubbing a wine-stained curtain, one of the minor gods. Everyone gets a little louder and forgets their laundry. But the fullonica doesn't stop. The city might feast, but the togas still need folding. Inside, things are running with a strange energy, fewer deliveries, but more people. Some workers are dressed more neatly than usual, hoping to sneak away early. The air carries hints of roasted nuts and garlands from the nearby street vendors. Even the steam from the vats feels more festive somehow. Livia is already at work when you arrive. She's humming under her breath, folding linens with brisk precision. "You're late," she teases. "The gods started partying without you." You grin and grab a stack of towels from the drying rack. "They'll manage. I brought hands and no hangover that's worth something." The work today is lighter, but stranger. Festival days bring odd requests. A satirical poet sends in a tunic soaked in honey, part of a performance. Apparently, a wealthy merchant demands a last-minute polishing of his already clean toga, claiming his rivals have theirs pressed twice. You and Livia try not to laugh as you steam the same fold 3 times over. Then a new order arrives. This one is serious. The parchment bears an official seal not from a senator or merchant, but the Temple of Vesta. It's a rare honor, and a higher burden. Livia's face tightens as she reads the note. They want 5 ceremonial cloths returned by sundown. She says, "No perfume, no oil, no mistake. You're tasked with rinsing them. The water is drawn fresh, untouched by soap or additives. You work in silence, hands careful, eyes sharp. The fabric is white and fine as breath, embroidered with patterns so delicate you're afraid to blink." Livia oversees the drying herself, hanging each piece beneath the awning. Shaded but warm, safe from dust or street smoke. As they dry, you catch fragments of celebration outside, the cheer of crowds, clatter of dancers on cobblestones, the beating of tambourines and singing voices. Rome, alive and jubilant, just beyond the laundry walls. "Do you ever go to the festivals?" you ask. Livia shrugs. "Sometimes, after work. I used to go when I was younger." You wipe your hands and sit beside her on a stone bench. "And now I fold tunics and send them to people who party without me." She doesn't sound bitter, just factual. "You could go tonight." You offer, "We'll finish early." She smiles faintly. Maybe. Just then, Marcus arrives from the dye room with a gift, small, cloth-wrapped, and still warm. "Roasted chestnuts," he says, offering the bundle. "From the boys at the dye yard. In case you're working through the festival like fools." You each take a few, the warmth seeping into your palms. The scent is earthy and sweet, grounding. Livia pops one into her mouth and sighs. Better than anything they'll sell by the forum. The rest of the day moves quickly. The ceremonial cloths are folded and wrapped in clean linen. The honey-stained tunic is rinsed with lemon and vinegar until it no longer sticks. The over-polished toga is pressed once more, just to soothe the client's ego. As the sun dips lower, turning the sky amber, a different kind of delivery arrives. This time it's not fabric. A man in a gray tunic, tall and soft-spoken, steps into the shop. His sandals are dusted with road grime. He carries a small scroll in one hand and a parcel in the other. "This is for Livia," he says. She takes the scroll, reads it, and goes very still. You watch her eyes scan the writing, then flick to the parcel, without a word. She carries it into the back room. Curiosity tugs at you, but you say nothing. A moment later, she returns. Her expression is unreadable. "I'll be out for the rest of the evening," she says quietly. "You're in charge until I return." And just like that, she's gone. The work continues. You count the bundles for next morning's deliveries, check the soap vats, lock up the dye room. The other workers ask no questions, just accept the change. Follow the rhythm. But something lingers in your mind. After the shop quiets down, after the last scrub bucket is emptied and the final lantern lit, you wander to the back room where Livia left the parcel. It sits on a shelf, still wrapped. You don't touch it, but you study the seal pressed into the twine, familiar. Simple a fisherman's mark, not from the city, from the coast. Historians still argue whether Fullers had connections beyond the city, whether they acted as confidants or couriers for people who couldn't be seen in the Forum or the Senate. But in this moment, it doesn't feel like politics. It feels personal. You return to the main hall, where the oil lamps flicker like quiet sentries. The building creaks softly as it settles into night. Outside, the festival continues. The sounds reach you in echoes, now laughter, drums, distant fireworks. But here, in the hum of after-work stillness, there's another kind of music, the rustle of clean linen, the soft drip of drying cloth, the hush of coals dying in the fire. You take one last walk through the shop, past the folded togas, the scrubbed stones, the rows of jars that hold not just soap and chalk, but stories. The room smells of pine ash and pressed wool, honest smells, earned smells. You exhale slowly, and for a moment, you forget the city outside. You belong here now. The next morning, Livia returns before sunrise. You're in the back folding room when you hear the front door creak open, followed by the familiar sound of her sandals brushing across the stone floor. She moves quietly, almost carefully, as though carrying a thought she hasn't quite decided what to do with yet. When she appears in the doorway, you can see it in her face, worn, not tired, but softened, like something heavy has been set down, but not far out of reach. "Good morning," you say gently. Livia offers a faint smile. "Did everything stay standing while I was gone?" You nod. No fires, no missing tunics. One broken needle. "Respectable," she says, and steps inside, removing her outer cloak and tossing it across a stool. She doesn't offer any explanation for her absence, and you don't ask. The unspoken rule between Fullers seems to extend beyond cloth sometimes. Silence is the cleanest thing you can offer someone. By the time the other workers arrive, Livia is already moving like she never left. She oversees the loading of wet linens from the rinse station and takes the day's delivery orders without missing a word. But something in her pace is different, calmer, measured. She's present in each task, as if trying to memorize the weight of a folded towel or the smell of lye rising off a warm vat. Mid-morning brings an unexpected visitor, a man in formal dress, robes pressed and sandals polished, steps through the fullonica's doorway with the ease of someone who assumes his presence needs no announcement. He's flanked by two assistants, both carrying scrolls and packages. The room stills almost immediately. Livia approaches him with her usual composure. "Can I help you?" The man holds out a hand. "I'm here on behalf of Gaius Septimus Regillus. His garments have been mistreated." The fullonica goes absolutely still. Livia's expression doesn't shift. "Mistreated. They were returned with creases, 3 of them, across the lower hem." You almost laugh until you see Livia's eyes. Not angry, not frightened, just sharp. "They were hand-folded by me," she replies. "Pressed 3 times, checked twice, and carried flat. If there was a crease, it didn't come from here." The man's nostrils flare slightly. One of his assistants scribbles on a wax tablet. The senator expects a full redo. Then he'll receive it, she says calmly, but only once I inspect the cloth myself. The man narrows his eyes. Be careful. Gaius Septimus has no patience for arrogance. Livia smiles, but there's no warmth in it. Good thing I don't sell patience. He leaves without another word. As soon as the door closes, the workers begin muttering. Marcus snorts from the dye station. Creases. As if they make him more wrinkled than age already has. You look at Livia. Are you really going to redo the order? Of course, she says. But I'll redo it better. You spend the next hour steaming out every imperfection from the senator's garments. The cloth is high quality, but heavy dyed a rare bronze-tinted white, reserved for the political elite. You press each fold under a heated stone slab, adjusting pressure with soaked cloths to prevent shine. The scent of damp wool and heated clay fills the room, familiar and grounding. When the new folds are done, Livia wraps the garments in oiled linen, then presses a fresh sprig of rosemary between the layers. He'll smell it before he unfolds it, she says. That's how you remind a man who did the work. By afternoon, the air is thick and warm. You return to the rear storeroom to refill the jars of soap paste chalk, pig fat, ash, a few drops of lemon oil. As you mix the ingredients, you hear soft footsteps behind you. Livia? She picks up a jar and runs her thumb along the rim. I grew up in a shop like this, she says. Not this one. But close. My mother ran it. My father was a stonemason, but it was her hands that kept us fed. You pause, unsure if you should speak, she used to say. Livia continues. That laundry tells the truth. The stains don't lie. They show where someone's been, what they've done, who they really are. She looks down at her hands. That parcel yesterday, it was from my brother. I hadn't seen him in 12 years. You wait, quietly. He's leaving Rome. Going south. Wants me to come with him. You don't say anything. She doesn't need encouragement. She needs space. I told him I'd think about it. She replaces the lid on the jar and exhales slowly. Anyway, let's not ruin a good batch of soap over family. The rest of the day continues without drama. Deliveries go out. Cloth comes in. The senator's garments are picked up without further complaint, though the assistant makes a point of inspecting each fold before nodding silently and walking away. You end the shift sweeping the corners of the folding room. Bits of thread, crushed soap dust, and stray chalk gather in little piles. As you work, you catch sight of Livia standing in the doorway, arms crossed, watching the light fade across the courtyard tiles. Would you really go, you ask? Gently. She doesn't answer at first. Then, softly, I don't know. Historians still argue whether Roman women in trades like fulling had the freedom to choose their own path, or whether they were simply trapped in the systems they kept alive. But as you stand beside Livia, broom in hand, you don't see a woman caught. You see a woman weighing two kinds of freedom: the freedom to leave and the freedom to stay. Night falls over the city, and with it, a hush. The last lanterns are lit, the doors are bolted, the cloths are folded and waiting, and somewhere beneath the fullonica's tiled roof, in a room that smells of ash and rosemary, a decision is quietly beginning to form. You arrive at the fullonica before dawn the next day, expecting silence, but there's already noise, soft, low-pitched clinks and shuffling. You find Livia in the folding room, a clay jug of water beside her, and a pile of unfolded tunics at her feet. She's working without urgency, methodically smoothing each garment across her lap, the folds falling with precision you've come to recognize as her signature. Couldn't sleep, you ask gently, still rubbing the last of the sleep from your eyes. She shakes her head but doesn't look up. didn't want to. You nod and join her, taking a tunic from the pile. The fabric is still cool from the night air, slightly damp around the hems. The quiet between you is not awkward, it's practiced, intentional. You fold alongside her in rhythm, a silent duet of creases and cotton. I dreamt of the sea last night, Livia says softly. Not the one near Ostia. The real sea, wide, blue, no barges or merchants, just quiet. You glance at her, but she's focused on the cloth. I was on a boat, she continues. My brother was there. We weren't speaking. But we didn't need to. Just drifting. You don't interrupt. There's weight behind the words. But also release. I woke up, she adds after a moment, and thought maybe I've already left. A little. It's the first time she's spoken of going as if it were something real, not just a passing idea floating on top of the soap foam. The rest of the fullonica stirs slowly into life. You hear the back gate open, the first apprentice yawning her way through the courtyard, the clatter of clay lids being lifted off soaking vats. Marcus grumbles somewhere near the dye jars. The city beyond your walls is waking, too. Your tasks begin as usual, rinsing a batch of pillow slips for a guest house, scouring the cooking smoke scent out of a senator's cloak, mending a hem torn by someone's overambitious dance step. It's a day like any other, but the air feels charged as if something invisible is about to shift. Then the door opens, and a courier steps inside. He's young, lean, and slightly out of breath. His tunic is dusted with road dirt, and he carries a folded note, sealed with a wax stamp bearing the insignia of the Guild of Fullers. Everyone pauses at the sight of it. He walks directly to Livia. A message, he says, offering the scroll. She takes it without a word, breaks the seal, unrolls the parchment. You see her eyes scan the text once, then again, her face unreadable. Then, finally, she speaks. They've offered me a master license. The room holds its breath. A master license is no small thing. It's recognition from the guild, the right to oversee your own workshop, set prices, train apprentices officially, and most important, claim ownership of your craft. It's freedom, but it's also permanence. Livia folds the scroll, places it on the table, and exhales through her nose. They want an answer within 3 days. You glance at her. Is it here in Rome? She nods. The shop across the river, one of the older ones. They want to reopen it. Say it needs someone who knows both dye and detail. Marcus raises an eyebrow. That's flattering. Or suspicious. Livia replies with a half smile. After the courier leaves, the fullonica resumes its motion, but you can feel the shift. Livia walks differently, now slower, as if measuring every step against the weight of the offer. That afternoon, she calls you to the storeroom. It's cooler there. Quieter. She pulls out the old record book, the one with scrawled recipes, wages, and names of every apprentice who's passed through the doors over the last decade. She flips through the pages slowly. This place wasn't always mine, she says. I started here cleaning buckets. The owner then, Lucilla, was tough as overcooked garum, but she taught me to measure with my hands, not my eyes. You watch her trace a name from years ago. She left me the key when she died. Livia continues. No ceremony, just a key and a folded napkin. That was it. She closes the book. And now I'm supposed to walk away with a seal and a scroll. You want to tell her it's okay to want more, to change. But something in her tone stops you. She looks at you for a long moment. Would you stay if I went? The question stuns you. You begin, then pause. I don't know. It's honest. And that seems to be what she needs. She nods once and reaches for a jar of chalk paste. Good. Don't say yes unless you mean it. You help her prep for the evening rinse cycle, both of you working more quietly than usual. Outside, the sky begins to blush with sunset, washing the Fullonica's stone walls with gold. Later that evening, after most of the others have gone, Livia lingers in the doorway, looking out toward the alley. You stand beside her, leaning on the door frame, watching a group of children chase each other past a fig vendor. I wonder what it would be like, she murmurs. To start over, somewhere else. With no names, no guild records, just fabric and time. You think about it, the freedom, the fear, the weight of change, probably the same. You say, just warmer air and different clients. She laughs quietly. And maybe a better view. You walk back inside together. The fullonica is dim now, the lamps casting soft shadows over the walls. The bundles for mourning are stacked neatly, the dye jars sealed, the scrub stones rinsed and placed on their shelves. Everything is ready for the next day or the next chapter, and somewhere, a boat waits on still water. The next morning dawns bright and dry, the kind of morning Rome prides itself on, when the sky feels polished and the breeze carries just enough warmth to remind you the worst of summer is still ahead. The fullonica opens to the light like a yawn, stone walls soaking in the sun as workers arrive one by one. Everything feels normal, except it isn't. You can feel the difference the moment Livia steps through the archway. She's dressed the same, speaks the same, moves through her tasks with the same efficient rhythm, but her eyes are somewhere else. As if every fold, every lather, every rinse is part of a deeper calculation. Time is ticking. The guild wants an answer. 3 days. You say nothing, and neither does she. Instead, you find comfort in the tasks. There's satisfaction in routine. Today's work includes several tunics from a local bakery, flour-caked, oil-smudged, the cuffs blackened from brushing hot clay ovens. You scrub them alongside a young apprentice, teaching her how to rinse the seams without damaging the stitching. She listens closely, mimicking your technique, her small hands determined to match your movements. Livia watches for a moment, then moves on. At midday, a man arrives with a new order. He's older, stooped from age or labor, but his voice is strong. He requests cleaning for 4 woolen cloaks, all from his family's shop, a glass-blowing business near the Aventine. They've soaked up smoke for months, he says. Can't wear them without coughing. Livia inspects the cloth. We'll soak them in pine vinegar and clay dust. Should clear the soot. The man nods, leaves a copper coin as a deposit, and departs. You carry the cloaks to the rear basin, where you mix the solution under Livia's supervision. The vinegar stings your nose. The pine resin floats on top like a shimmer. You submerge the first cloak and watch the water darken as soot begins to lift. There's a strange satisfaction in watching something so ruined begin to come clean. Funny thing about wool, Livia says nearby, inspecting the stitching on a cuff. Takes time to absorb the bad, takes longer to let it go. You wonder if she's talking about the cloak or herself. The afternoon heat sets in, and the fullonica slows slightly. Tasks become quieter. Livia disappears for a stretch, and when she returns, she's carrying something you haven't seen before, a scroll case. Old and leather-bound, its edges cracked with age. She sits beside you and opens it. Inside are fragments, scraps of parchment, cloth samples, a charcoal sketch of a building, a map, a coastal village, trees, a small house. My brother sent this too, she says. Said there's a workshop there. Small, needs repair, but near the sea. You study the map. It's a quiet place, at least in ink. A bay shaped like a spoon, a path winding toward hills, far from the press of marble and politics. He says we could run it together, she adds. voice barely above a whisper. Something simpler. No guild, no inspections. Just clean cloth, clean air. You nod. And do you believe him? I don't know. She replies. But I want to. She replaces the map carefully, sealing the scroll again. For a moment, you just sit together. The only sound the soft gurgle of water trickling from a spout nearby. The fullonica hums on, but in the stillness of that corner, it feels like a pause. By evening, you're in the courtyard again, helping Marcus finish a small dye-batch walnut brown, mixed for a group of traveling performers. He's in a surprisingly talkative mood. You know, he says, stirring the basin with slow, practiced strokes. When I first got here, I didn't speak for 2 weeks. Thought it was all noise and steam and too many rules. And now you ask, still is. He grins. But there's peace in it. When you know your work, when your hands remember things your head forgot, you glance at the dye, swirling like smoke in the basin. What would you do? If you were Livia, Marcus doesn't answer right away. He pulls a strip of cloth from the water, holds it up to the fading light, studies the color. Then he says, leaving doesn't fix everything, but staying doesn't always mean you're stuck. Depends what you want to grow. You nod. His answer makes more sense than most. That night, after the last cloth is folded, after the floors are swept and the vats drained, you find Livia standing in the doorway of the fullonica, looking out over the alley. It's quiet. The city has settled. Even Rome has to sleep eventually. She doesn't turn when you approach. I have 1 day left, she says. Then I tell them yes, or no. You stand beside her. What does your gut say? She exhales. My gut wants salt air and silence. My heart wants to stay. And my hands? Well, they just want something to do. You smile? That sounds about right. She turns to face you. For a moment, she's not the master of the fullonica. Not the trainer, not the one who always has the answers. She's just someone standing on the edge of a choice. Whatever you decide, you say, this place will remember you. She nods once. Then, softly, so will you? You meet her gaze. I already do. You step away, back into the fullonica. The lamps flicker. The stones are warm from the day's heat. The cloths breathe quietly in their stacks, each one holding the fingerprint of someone's labor, someone's story. And somewhere out there, just beyond the edge of the map, a quieter sea waits. The final day arrives without ceremony. No special orders, no visiting officials, no unexpected scrolls or creased garments with implied threats. The fullonica begins its morning routine with the same clatter of buckets and whisper of folding cloth. But you notice the difference not in the tasks, but in the people. Everyone senses it, even if no one says it aloud. Livia moves through the workshop with quiet certainty. Her eyes pause longer on the dye jars. Her hands linger a moment more as she straightens a drying line. She checks the scrub stones not once, but twice, adjusting their angle just so. These are the gestures of someone committing details to memory. You don't ask what she's decided. Not yet. But you feel it coming. Your own day begins with the usual preparing rinsing basins, stirring soap paste, checking the wood supply under the hearth. One of the younger apprentices, Lucia, joins you at the rinse station, eyes wide, fingers nervous. She's really leaving. Isn't she? Lucia asks in a whisper. I don't know. You say honestly. Maybe. Lucia dips a tunic into the water. She taught me how to twist the seams. Said, the water listens better that way. You smile. She told me that, too. Outside. The weather is perfect for drying cool wind. No clouds. sun slicing down in clean sheets. You hang a row of towels, watching them ripple in rhythm, like sails preparing to catch a wind neither you nor they can predict. Later in the morning, Marcus comes in carrying a bundle of undyed cloth, last-minute order. He mutters, "Some wedding or another. Everything is urgent when love is involved." You help him prep the dye rosewood and ash for a soft blush tint. As it simmers, he leans in. "She told me this morning. The answer. Your breath catches, and she's going." The word lands like a ripple in still water. Not a crash, just motion, inevitable, expanding. You look over your shoulder, across the courtyard, and see her Livia kneeling near a fire basin, brushing ash from a pile of aprons. Calm, precise. Already 1 foot in farewell. "She asked me to stay on," Marcus adds. "Train the new dyers. Keep the mixtures right." You nod. "Are you going too?" He shrugs. Someone has to keep the colors true. Around noon, Livia calls for everyone to gather near the folding tables. The room stills, the only sound the squeak of a drying rope shifting in the breeze. She stands straight, hands behind her back, eyes scanning the workers, yourself among them. "I've sent my letter to the guild," she begins. "I've accepted the post across the river. I'll be leaving this fullonica tomorrow." No one gasps, no one cries. The silence is respectful, accepting. "This place has been my life," she continues, her voice steady. "And all of you, my teachers, my partners, my apprentices, my family. I didn't build this with bricks. I built it with hands. Yours, mine, every scrubbed seam and folded corner." She holds up a key. The same one, perhaps, that had once been left for her in a folded napkin. She sets it on the table. Marcus will stay and oversee the dye work. Lucia will begin learning full-time under his guidance. The rest of you will keep this place running the same way we always have, with care, with pride, and without shortcuts. Then she looks at you. "And this one," she says, "will take my place." The room turns toward you. You feel the warmth rise in your chest, a rush of disbelief, of pride, of quiet fear. You open your mouth to respond, but Livia shakes her head gently. No speeches. Not yet. Just keep folding. The rest of the day flows like water over stone. Everyone returns to their tasks, but with an undercurrent of emotion gentle and constant. You help with deliveries, then check the ledger, realizing that soon it will be your signature at the bottom, not Livia's. In the late afternoon, she calls you into the archive room. Everything is where it always is: the recipes, the swatches, the scrolls. But today, they feel more like gifts than tools. "I've marked the pages you'll need most," she says. "The rest, you'll learn by doing. You already know more than you think." You nod, but your voice catches. "Why me?" She tilts her head, because you never rushed. You listened, you asked the right questions, and you made the cloth cleaner than it was when it arrived. That's all the job really is. She hands you a folded parchment blank, save for your name written in small script at the top. Start your own record, one day. Someone will read it and wonder who taught you. You tuck it carefully into your apron pocket. That evening, after the final load has been dried, folded, and tied, you find her in the courtyard, brushing lint from a cloak she isn't wearing yet. The sky is orange and lavender. The stones are warm beneath your feet. "Packed, you ask? Almost," she says. "You afraid?" "Yes." She answers honestly. "But less than I was yesterday." You sit beside her. "What will you miss most?" "The smell," she says, "of ash and soap and steam. It gets into your bones, makes you feel useful." You nod. "It'll still be here." "I know," she says. then stands, brushing off her hands. She looks around one last time at the drying lines, the dye jars, the scrub stones, the fire pit. Then she turns to you. You know what to do, and you do. The next morning, she is gone. But her key remains. So does the rhythm of work. The fullonica breathes. And under your hands, the cloth still comes clean. The morning after Livia's departure is strange only in how ordinary it feels. You open the door just as the sun climbs above the rooftops, casting pale gold light across the stones. The fullonica hums with the same familiar sounds, the slap of wet cloth against stone, the low bubble of a soap pot heating near the hearth, the rustle of linen hanging from the ropes, but now every noise lands differently, louder, somehow, clearer. You set down your satchel and breathe in deep. Yes, the air still smells of ash, vinegar, and lavender. The fullonica lives. Marcus is already in the dye room, sleeves rolled, testing the temperature of a basin with the tip of his knuckle. He doesn't look up when you pass, but his voice follows you across the room. She would have liked the weather. You glance at the high windows. The sky is as bright as polished marble. A breeze carrying the scent of baked bread from somewhere down the alley. She would have liked this place even more today. You say back. He grunts, but there's a smile behind it. You begin with the records. The ledger feels heavier than usual as you open it. The last entry in Livia's handwriting is neat, deliberate, almost ceremonial. Just beneath it, you write your own name. The ink dries faster than you expect. There's no ceremony, no announcement. But now the fullonica is yours. Lucia enters carrying a basket of damp towels and nearly trips over a stool. You catch her elbow and steady her. Thanks, she mumbles. I didn't sleep much. Too much thinking, you ask. She nods, setting down the basket. She told me I'd take her spot one day. Not the full workshop, just the mending bench. But I thought I'd have years. You kneel beside her and begin folding. It won't be the same. It's not supposed to be. But it'll still be good. She nods, lips pressed tight, and sets to work. Throughout the morning, customers come and go. Most don't mention the change. One older woman eyes you as you count her coins and says, "You're the one folding now, I am." She watches you for a moment, then nods. As long as my husband's cloak comes back softer than his manners, I won't complain. It's the closest thing to a compliment you get that day. Tasks stack quickly. A wine merchant's linens need degreasing. A young man from the city watch brings in a tunic stiff with dried blood, likely his own. From the look in his eyes, you set it aside for later, planning to use the goat bile and chalk mixture Livia always favored. You inspect the tools, the brushes, still firm, the scrub stones, still smooth, the soap, already mixed, cooling in broad clay bowls near the hearth. Nothing has changed, and yet everything has. By midday, you gather the apprentices. Not for speeches you remember Livia's rule, but to assign responsibilities. Lucia takes the mending bench. 2 others take the rinse vats. You split deliveries between 2 older boys and keep the folding for yourself. Watch the edges. You tell them. A poor fold is louder than a sharp tongue. They nod. They listen. They move with purpose. You feel the rhythm return. Hesitant, but growing stronger. In the afternoon, a delivery arrives from the guild, a package of new ledger parchment, a fresh wax seal, and a scroll bearing your name. Licensed master of the Via Emiliana Fullonica. You hold it for a long time before breaking the seal. Inside, a short letter. Your application has been processed and affirmed. Your shop is now officially recognized under your name. May your folds be sharp and your vats steady. Guild dues are due next full moon. Beneath the formal tone is something unmistakable recognition. A line in the sand. You are now the story's next chapter. You store the letter in the archive, right beside Livia's final entry, and mark your first day with a small notation. No fanfare, just ink and memory. Later, as the sun tilts low across the courtyard, Marcus finds you adjusting the drying ropes. He watches you work, then says, "It's quieter without her." You nod, but not empty. He thinks about that, then grunts his approval. You've kept the beat, as you hang the last towel. He pauses. "You know," he says, "when she started here, she used to burn the soap, left the fire too high. Took her 3 weeks to admit it." You laugh, surprised. Livia. "Oh yes. Thought she could fix it without anyone knowing. Smelled like scorched tallow for days." You smile, picturing it. Good to know even she made mistakes. She made plenty, just didn't let them own her. As dusk deepens, you walk through the shop one more time, past the now silent hearth, the buckets stacked by the rear wall, the folded stacks of cloth ready for morning. The tools are washed and put away, the floors swept. The air still carries the warm scent of work. You stop at the main table, the one where Livia left the key. It's still there. You pick it up. It's heavier than it looks, worn smooth from years of use. You carry it to the door and lock it for the night, the final click echoing softly across the stone. The key now belongs in your apron, and you in this place. You walk home through narrow streets, the lamps flickering to life overhead. A child runs past you carrying a loaf of bread. Somewhere, a man sings off-key, Rome, unchanged, eternal. And in your pocket, the key rests easy. Tomorrow, the vats will boil, the cloth will stain, the seams will fray. And under your hands, they will come clean, just as they always have, just as they always will. The days begin to settle into something that feels like ownership. Not just routine had always been there, but something deeper, more rooted. With each morning you unlock the fullonica's doors, the metal cool against your palm. You feel it settle a little more into your bones. The rhythm is yours now, not inherited, not borrowed, claimed. You arrive before the sun most mornings, alone at first, enjoying the silence before the water starts to steam and voices rise. You light the small brazier in the corner, sweep the entrance, and walk the length of the shop, checking each basin, each vat, each drying line like a captain inspecting their ship. It's not pride that drives it, at least not only pride, but a kind of stewardship, a quiet promise to keep it running, to keep it honest. By the time the apprentices arrive, you've already stirred the soap paste, boiled water for soaking, and drafted that day's entries into the ledger. Marcus joins next, punctual as ever, and without speaking, you hand him the list of dye orders. He nods once. That's all you need. Lucia, growing more confident, takes the mending table now without hesitation. You watch her from across the room as she threads her needle with surprising ease. She no longer hunches. She no longer asks for permission to begin. Livia would have noticed that. She would have smiled. Some days, you expect to see her in the doorway, hands on her hips, brows raised, a correction half formed on her lips. She doesn't appear, but her presence lingers in the shape of every fold, every neatly tied parcel. Late one morning, a stranger enters the fullonica. He's tall, with sun-darkened skin and a traveler's cloak stained by weather and road. He carries a single tunic in a leather satchel, and when he sets it on the folding table, he handles it with the care of someone placing down something fragile or sacred. "This needs to be cleaned," he says, "but I'd ask that it not be altered." You open the satchel and unfold the garment. It's plain, but well made. dust clings to the hem. There's a faint wine stain near the neckline, and sweat marks under the arms. The kind of wear that tells of long travel, not leisure. You nod. We can handle this. He hesitates, then reaches into the satchel again, and draws out a second item, a small strip of cloth. Faded and frayed, embroidered with the figure of a bird, partially unraveled but still recognizable. You freeze. It's the same bird you saw stitched onto one of Livia's old aprons. Her mother's symbol, she once told you, a coastal bird, found only near the southern shores. She sent you, you ask? He smiles. Not unkindly. She told me to visit, said the workshop would know what to do. You feel something shift in your chest, not a pang, not exactly joy, just connection, a tether, stretched but intact. You set to work personally. The tunic is stubborn, not just in stains, but in how the cloth clings to its history. You soak it twice, first in warm water, then in vinegar. The wine stain lifts slowly. The dust dissolves into clouds. You scrub the seams with a boar hair brush, careful not to fray the stitching. When it dries, you press it carefully with warm stone and wrap it in linen infused with rosemary and lemon peel. You don't charge the traveler. He accepts the parcel with a respectful nod. She said you'd treat it right. She taught me how. You reply. That night, after the shop closes and the apprentices drift home, you sit in the courtyard with the ledger open on your lap. You write the day's final note. But then you hesitate, pen hovering above the parchment. You turn to the back of the ledger, the blank pages waiting beyond orders and numbers, and you write. Today we cleaned a tunic that carried the salt of 3 towns and the dust of 4 roads. I think she meant it as a message. I think I received it. The ink dries slowly. You don't close the book right away. Over the next week, the workshop finds its new rhythm. A senator's household begins using your services regularly, always precise, always demanding. A young widow brings in her husband's old cloak, asking if it can be reshaped into something lighter for spring. Marcus dyes a tapestry for a wedding, and it's so vibrant that 2 other families place orders before the week is out. Word spreads. You notice it in the small things, the couriers that nod with familiarity, the shopkeepers who send work directly, the increased pace of deliveries. Reputation takes time in Rome, but when it arrives with weight. One afternoon, Lucia appears at your side, fidgeting. I was wondering, she says, if I could start keeping a record, like you do. You hand her a blank ledger and smile. Write what you notice, not just what's ordered. She beams. Like how the mending thread always breaks when it rains, exactly that. You watch her retreat to the far bench, opening the cover with both hands like a sacred text. It reminds you of yourself, not long ago. Livia's voice echoes faintly in your mind. One day someone will read your record and wonder who taught you. You smile at the thought. That evening, as you lock up, you notice the light falling just right, gold dusting the workshop. The stones glowing soft orange. The scent of soap and sun-warmed linen lingers in the air. And as you sweep the last corner, you pause. You look out through the open door toward the quiet street beyond. And you whisper, thank you. For the key. For the rhythm. For the trust. The fullonica is no longer a place you work. It is a place you carry. You don't notice the shift at first, not in any single moment, but in how the days begin folding into each other like cloth under your fingers. The work continues. Always. Tunics come in heavy with road dust and leave smelling of lavender and lye. Soldiers bring battle-worn cloaks to soak, and they're returned lined and mended, ready for whatever lies ahead. You walk the fullonica each morning before the sun rises, now out of instinct rather than obligation, and still, you hear her voice, Sometimes it's in the way you correct an apprentice's grip on the folding line. Other times, it echoes in your mind when you stir a soap pot too hot and catch the faintest whiff of scorched tallow. Don't waste time fixing what could have been done right the first time. You make a habit of writing in the back of the ledger after hours. Short entries, observations, thoughts, a smell, a phrase overheard. One reads, Lucia rolled her hem without asking. She didn't notice she did it. That means she's ready. Another, the dye basin caught a shadow today. I stirred it twice, still stained blue. The water remembers. The fullonica is thriving. You've taken on 2 new apprentices, both recommended by one of the dye couriers who said, they listen more than they talk. That's rare. You taught them how to haul without spilling, how to fold with rhythm, how to seal an oilcloth parcel without cracking the wax. More orders come from across the city, no longer just from nearby households or merchants, but from villa estates on the edges of the Aventine and Caelian hills. You hear your name spoken at the bakery, at the market, even once absurdly at the public baths, where someone asked if your vinegar solution really removes old oil from silver-threaded cuffs. You try not to let it go to your head. But it's hard not to feel something when a stranger drops a coin pouch on your table and says, I was told this is where things are brought back to life. One morning, you receive a letter sealed with deep green wax. The stamp is unfamiliar, 2 crossed reeds, the mark of a laundry guild from further south. You break it open. The letter is short. A woman writes of her own fullonica in a seaside town, one struggling to recover from flood damage. She had heard through traders, through travelers, that yours was orderly, reliable, kind. She asks if you'd consider sending one of your apprentices to train her new hires. Just for a season. Maybe 2. You reread the letter several times. Then you call for Lucia. She listens as you explain. She doesn't say anything at first, just runs her fingers across the folded edge of the parchment. Then she looks up and asks, You think I can teach someone else? You nod. You already do. Every day. She presses her lips together, as if trying to swallow a smile and the weight of it all at once. I'll think about it, she says. But it's a good thing, right? It means the folds are clean. Yes, you say. It means the folds are yours now. 2. That night, you sit in the courtyard alone after everyone else is gone. A pot of dye cools behind you. A folded pile of fresh linens rests nearby. The air is thick with summer-warm stone, distant citron oil, smoke rising from hearths down the block. You take out the record book again. The story keeps moving forward, not fast, but steady, like rinse water finding its way through cloth. You close the book and lean back against the wall, your head tilted toward the stars just beginning to emerge. You think of Livia. You wonder if she still wakes early, if her hands still carry the scent of ash and lavender, if the sea, as she once dreamed, is enough. You hope it is. Sometime later, a sound pulls you from your thoughts. A knock not at the front door, but from the alley gate. You rise and unbolt it. There, in the moonlight, stands a woman you don't recognize at first. She's younger than Livia, with eyes that carry the same quiet weight. The same silence that comes from watching the world more than speaking into it. She holds out a bundle. My mother said this place was the only reason she ever trusted Rome. She says, she asked me to bring this. You take it carefully. Wrapped inside is a tunic, well-worn, sea-washed, smelling faintly of salt and rosemary. A single thread of blue embroidery runs along the inside of the collar. Not decorative, not visible when worn, just a mark, a signature. You know it instantly. You don't ask questions. You simply bow your head, set the garment on the folding table, and whisper, We'll treat it right. The girl nods and steps back into the night. You carry the tunic inside and unwrap it beneath the soft light of the hearth. It's faded but intact. Threadbare in places, but still strong. A traveler's tunic, a worker's tunic, a fuller's tunic. You trace the embroidered thread, one finger resting on the place where the stitch doubles back. A mistake, maybe, or maybe not. Maybe she meant it to be there. A twist, a return, a reminder. You set the tunic aside for morning. You bank the fire. You check the locks. And before you leave, you look once more across the quiet fullonica. Tomorrow, the work will begin again. The cloth will soak. The dye will steep. The seams will stretch. And under your hands, steady now, calloused with purpose, it will all come clean. End of script. Sweet dreams.